here. No political correctness and no wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA.
Thanks for downloading, listening, and sharing. My name is Frank Salvato, and you're spending a few moments in Underground USA. If it were something to make light of, I'd borrow a line from Ronald Reagan and say, "There you go again." But it isn't anything to be taken lightly. Another person, Ryan Wellesley Ruth, riddled with Trump derangement syndrome, has failed in an attempt to assassinate the former president and current presidential candidate. Ruth, 58, a current resident of Hawaii and formerly of Greensboro, North Carolina, had an X account filled with posts trying to recruit people to fight for Ukraine and Taiwan, as well as pro-Hamas, anti-Israel content. Ruth, the New York Post reported, frequently touted his do-gooder credentials and championed left-wing causes on social media. Since 2019, he has donated exclusively to far-left Democrats. The assailant is in custody and being questioned after being apprehended by Martin County, Florida Sheriff's deputies. The FBI and Secret Service are involved in the investigation. An AK-47 rifle was found at the scene, and Governor Ron DeSantis has launched an investigation through the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Of course, we need to wait until all the facts come out, but it wouldn't be a stretch for a betting man to believe that the assailant is of the ilk of the far left and consumed with Trump derangement syndrome or its extension, conservative derangement syndrome. I received a communication from a good friend of mine who lives in Belgium. He's a man who keeps his fingers on the political pulses coming from several directions internationally. His sentiments, I believe, hit the nail right on the head and also offer some insight into how the far left's antagonism of the American people to their goal of creating a divide has put not only the United States on the path to chaos, but the entire free world. My friend wrote, in part, "So it's the second time that this has happened. Here in Europe, no matter what your affiliation is, we are wondering what is really going on in the United States. Your society's current political polarization is definitely huge, beyond anything we can imagine here. The media is guilty of this situation. They are just ugly and irresponsible agitators and propagandists. To me, all this seems, above all, from the conservative derangement syndrome. Of course, Donald Trump is a deadly danger to the progressive movement and around the world, not just in the U.S., much more than anybody else. All this is making me terribly nervous. The U.S. is starting to suck quite a bit, while it should not be like that. I pray and do hope that Donald J. Trump will get reelected in November. He has a mission right now, not just the usual presidential mandate." My friend is correct on several counts, but particularly so when it comes to his thoughts on the Trump derangement and conservative derangement syndromes and the media's role in stoking hatred toward both. For almost 10 years now, the mainstream media and the Democrat Party have been disingenuously and viciously misrepresenting Donald Trump as xenophobic, misogynistic, megalomaniac, a threat to the free world. If anything happened that was blameable, it was Trump's fault. In fact, almost immediately after this second assassination attempt on President Trump, U.S. Representative Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat from Texas, said the MAGA movement is a, quote, domestic threat to the country, unquote. And House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, a Democrat from New York, just 1 hour after Trump was targeted, called Republicans extreme, saying, "We must stop them." And MSNBC had the unmitigated gall to blame Trump's rhetoric for his own assassination attempt. Presidential campaign or not, politics or not, this is the kind of incendiary rhetoric that motivates ideologically deranged assholes like Ruth and crooks to do what they have done. They genuinely believe they are making a difference, and that is born of the retarded Marxist philosophy that the ends justify the means, a core belief in contemporary Democrat and progressive politics. In defiance of the facts and overwhelming evidence, the left in our country, along with the global elites of the World Economic Forum, United Nations, Wall Street, and the international banking community, have done everything in their power to demonize a man they threw roses at until he decided to run for office as a conservative and champion the American middle and lower middle classes. The second Trump decided to put his love of country over his allegiance to the global and bi-coastal elites, the moment he chose to champion Main Street over Wall Street, the long knives came out, and eventually AR-15s and AK-47s. They were out for the man. A great deal of the blame for the divide in this country must be laid at the feet of Democrats like Biden, Harris, Clinton, Pelosi, Schumer, Ayok, and the rest of the win-at-all-costs machine. If they aren't full-blown Marxists, they are Marxist-aligned opportunists who worship power and money over the people. They are, by definition, the very people everyone should vote to keep away from public office. Yet, the voting public has become so brainwashed by the hate-filled repetition of the mainstream media, a repetition ordered up by the wannabe oligarchic elite in our country, that they just keep voting these hateful reprobates to office while inciting them to acts that cross the Rubicon to homicidal. And after each of the recent assassination attempts on Trump's life, they disgustingly attempt to blame access to firearms as the culprit catalyst. Not their stoking of the fires of divisive hatred, but the inanimate object for the attempted murders. It isn't enough they have set the stage for an assassination. They want to double dip on their hate by damaging the Second Amendment as well. There's no doubt about it. From this point forward, Donald Trump needs a lethal private security detail, the same kind that Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and even that censorship-happy, nauseating little twerp Mark Zuckerberg has. It's expensive, but the alternative deems that price affordable. My friend in Belgium is right. Our nation's current political polarization definitely is huge, and the media is guilty of inciting the hatred emanating from the political left. Its derangement is ugly, and its actions are irresponsible. And, like my friend, all this is making me nervous. If the Obama left figures out a way to steal yet another election via the Chicago way, the United States will, in fact, suck. And it shouldn't be like that. When we come back, our segment on America's Third Watch, broadcast nationally from our flagship station WGUL AM 860 and FM 93.7 in Tampa, Florida.
You're listening to Underground USA.
Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Whenever they're asked a question about their proposed policies, they never give a straight answer. In fact, when they do give an answer, they take both sides of the issue.
In 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
In 2019, I believe, at a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
How are the voters supposed to know what they actually stand for?
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. and in equal measure, the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity.
Maybe that's the point.
Next question, please.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
My values have not changed.
Our First Amendment right to free speech is under attack by woke activists and politicians. Wokeism seeks to suppress opinions and ideas that are deemed offensive, insensitive, or problematic, thereby stifling the free exchange of ideas and the pursuit of truth. It emphasizes social justice, identity politics, political correctness, and the regulation of language, and relies on euphemisms and ambiguous language to create the illusion of consensus, thus avoiding confrontation with opposing viewpoints. Wokeism is antithetical to free speech because it stifles the free exchange of ideas and the pursuit of truth. This is in direct opposition to the principles of free speech. Wokeism is an ideological cancer shopped by those who want to control you. This November, we have an opportunity to render wokeness to the ash heap of history. Vote smart. Vote against wokeness and those who would use it to control you.
And, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
News, insight, passion. AM 930, The Answer.
Well, it is Happy Monday, and it could have been a very, very different kind of Monday, wouldn't it, Frank?
Well, it certainly could have been a darker Monday.
Yeah.
It's not a bright Monday. It's not a good Monday. Whenever we have an assassination attempt on a presidential candidate and the next president, it's a bad day. And the fact that it's been 2 and 2 months. 2 and less than 2 months?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. It needs to be pointed out and repeated ad nauseum that the only ideology that's pulling a trigger is the far left Trump derangement syndrome individual. They're the only people, and these are the same people that scream about gun control and the same people who scream about fascism and violence and you name it. But they're the only ones that are that have their fingers on triggers. So we need to dispense with the absolute lie that it's the biggest threat to democracy is the white supremacist. The white supremacist who's this gun-toting, gun camp, compound living white supremacist. It's the Marxists among us and the fascists among us that are the lethal danger to people. And until we're honest about that, we're not even coming close to addressing the issue.
You're right about that. And, Frank, there's, with all this rhetoric that's been going on, one of the things that's part of the investigation, not for this particular thing, but in general, we know the Trump campaign has been warned that there are outside influences going after them. Keith comes in with a direct message this morning. He says, do you think the shooter may have been manipulated by Iran, which has made it known they want to get rid of Donald Trump? He says he's obviously delusional, and Iran may have been able to tell him where to be and when to be there because this was not a publicized event for Donald Trump. It was a personal golf outing.
I don't think this guy needed any more goading than his own mind. When you look at the posts that he had on X and Facebook before Facebook took it down, I would like to hear the rationale behind that. He was somebody who was trying to recruit NATO-trained Afghan soldiers to fight in Ukraine and to go fight in Taiwan, where there's no conflict happening right now.
He seems pretty off the deep end. No doubt.
He wanted to buy a rocket from Elon Musk. He was trying to price out a rocket from Elon Musk, and he's an anti-Israel advocate. So he had some deep-seated issues. Now, that's the kind of person Iran would contact. So the investigation will bear this out. But I don't think he needed any more delusion than he already had in his head. And I'm glad to hear that Governor DeSantis down in Florida is saying, you know what, I'm glad the FBI is looking into things. I'm glad the sheriff's looking into things. I'm glad the Secret Service is looking into things. But we're going, as the state, he's directed the state to initiate an investigation looking into this. It'll be interesting to see if there's anything that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement comes up with that these other agencies didn't when it all is said and done.
No, you're right. And I'm glad that Governor DeSantis is doing that, because it seems like between the Commission on the Assassination Attempt of Donald Trump and the House, basically, Governor DeSantis, obviously something is happening here in terms of protocol, in terms of practicality, of some happenstance. There was a bystander who took a picture of the guy's license plate as he fled. They wouldn't maybe not have known that as quickly, perhaps. And it just seems like we're relying on luck at this point to a great degree.
It seems to me that the surveillance cameras at the golf course probably should have picked something up, the security cameras. But it's to the point, and this came up in discussions yesterday with some people that I was talking to, where yes, he's got Secret Service protection, but he should take some of his money and get some private security that's world class.
Well, I don't know. I was biting my nails there for a minute with the Taylor Swift endorsement.
Yeah. First off, an endorsement from Taylor Swift means about the same as sneezing through a Kleenex. It means nothing. I mean, it really is. If you're influenced by a Taylor Swift endorsement, you might want to seek some therapy.
Yeah.
Because your priorities are completely out of whack. I don't think there was anybody there who was going to say, well, if Taylor Swift endorsed her, I'm going to be voting for Kamala Harris. They weren't going to be voting for Donald Trump in the first place.
No kidding. You're exactly right about that.
But there are enough people out there who are so nauseated at the over-marketing of Taylor Swift that anything Taylor Swift makes them roll their eyes and say, you know what, turning it off. The NFL lost a bunch of people watching it because they were tired of the Taylor Swift festival every time a Kansas City Chiefs game came on. So if they're going to be moving people who are sports fans away from watching the sport that they like, that's not somebody I go courting an endorsement for a presidential vote. Not to mention the fact that her entire career is based on the fact that she writes songs about her bad choices. So why do you want an endorsement from somebody like that? And she tends to be fairly vacuous. So it's not something to be proud of to get Taylor Swift's endorsement. Big frickin' deal.
But then she'd have to write another song that says, I was wrong about Kamala Harris. Oh, well, I was wrong. But
I just wish her 15 minutes was over. I'm not taking anything away from any perceived talent she may have, but there are a lot of more talented people out there who deserve to be heard than this overhyped, over Madison Avenued, flash, because that's what she is. She's a bright, shiny thing. If you like Taylor Swift, God bless you. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you like Taylor Swift. I tend to be a Jimmy Buffett fan. I also like jazz music. I think there's a lot of things that haven't been given the light for him and artists in the jazz world or the blues world for that matter. But I'm not a fan of Taylor Swift. I don't find her music to be engaging. So if you like her, God bless you. But I just think that the star that you like is being overhyped to the point where it makes a lot of other people vomit.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. And when you mentioned Jimmy Buffett, of course, brings back memories. I really enjoyed actually having a cheeseburger in paradise. I really did. I really did.
He influenced a lot of lives. He's missed by people who enjoyed his music, and for people who understood that you could have a disagreement about politics but still enjoy music, or talk to friends who have different thoughts, hold different political values. He was somebody that you could center on. I have a bunch of friends who happen to be Democrats who I'd meet up with at Jimmy Buffett concerts, the 60 and 60 plus that I saw. But, entertainment is entertainment. And he was bright enough to keep his politics personal.
Mm-hmm.
These people like George Clooney and Taylor Swift and Barbara Streisand and Rob Reiner and Ben Stiller, talk about another vacuous person, who need to wear their politics on their sleeve just because they think that their fans are going to vote the way they want them to vote because, well, I'm George Clooney. I don't care. And nobody else cares either.
Yeah.
They really don't.
Well, you know what they say, the entertainment wants to be close to power wants to be close to the entertainment, and they're like a mutual admiration society, so that's why they're so lockstep.
When the court jesters failed to amuse the king, they often ended up either with their head in the gallows or in a dungeon. So there's a certain danger with shooting your mouth off about politics in the public square if you think you're all that because you pretend to be someone else or because you can sing and rhyme.
Yeah.
So, hey, beware. It's a double-edged sword.
But isn't it interesting too, Frank, because to a great degree, if you're in the entertainment field, and you support Democrats or Democrat policy or even Kamala Harris at this point, that's a very safe place for you to say things, but the opposite is not true. You can't say, I really think Trump would be better for our foreign policy, the border, and the economy. And suddenly you'd find yourself, in a very strange place, I'm sure.
It's a safe place to shoot your mouth off if you're in your echo chamber. But that's an echo chamber now that is rarely putting out anything worth calling entertainment today. All you have to do is sit down for 25 minutes to try to find something to watch on Netflix or Prime in order to go, wow, there's nothing but garbage out there.
A lot
of it is just garbage. So, hey, if you want to be self-important in an industry that's flailing for quality, okay, I guess.
Well, Frank, you mentioned something we were talking earlier about, who's actually getting a hold of these triggers. It's not the conservatives, it's not the right, but when it comes to Marxists, when it comes to their ilk, there's this thing that we've talked about before called the end justifies the means. It's almost anything is permissible as long as it, advances the agenda in a greater way.
Yeah, and that's think about what ideology uses that kind of a thought process. Alinsky talked about it all the time. Karl Marx talked about it all the time. Lenin talked about it all the time. Mao talked about it all the time. Castro talked about it all the time. You go down to Venezuela and Maduro's talking about it today. So, when we talk about assassins throughout American history, it's either been somebody who's been radically left or a fascist or a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to find a presidential assassin throughout American history who is a conservative or a Republican. So, there's something about this, I have to win, and if I can't win, you must die. It sounds extreme, but evidently that thought process exists on the left side of the aisle to where if it's not constantly considered, it's certainly something that hits the very, very far radical people in that ideology because they're the ones that keep putting their finger on the trigger.
Indeed. And certainly, the outcome of such a thing would be incalculable at this point. And we could I thank the Lord we don't have a different story that we'd be talking about this morning for obvious reasons, but they just don't care how much chaos actually can be generated here.
No, they need the ultimate amount of chaos, because out of chaos comes radical transformation. And we've seen it anywhere a Marxist revolution has taken place. When you look at what happened when Mao brought his revolution to China and transformed it into communist China, there was a culling of people in the tens of millions, if not the hundreds of millions. Look at Stalin, the Marxist revolution over in the Soviet Union, tens of millions of people. The fascists in Italy and Germany, tens of millions of people. Their change never comes unless there's violence involved. And that's why I keep saying this Marxist revolution here in the United States that's being attempted at this moment has got deep repercussions. And we're seeing the violence starting to eke in. It's not genocidal at this point, but it's certainly taking aim at the top echelons of our political class.
We do have a caller that's holding on right now, but I do want to ask you a real quick question first, and that is, why on earth are they asking for more debates? In fact, the Harris communications person was saying Donald Trump is playing games with the American people, basically, and the American people deserve another debate. Do they know something that we don't know? Especially there was another poll that came out saying that really nothing moved for Kamala Harris, at least in terms of likely voters, from the debate. So, what do you think?
Well, they're using it as an opportunity to mold a narrative, and the narrative they want to create is that Donald Trump is unwilling to talk. This is a perfect example of what the progressive left and what the Marxists in the United States do. And it's a Karl Marx philosophy. Always accuse your opponent of what you're doing in real time to create the chaos of thought. Kamala Harris doesn't want to talk to the media, so what do you accuse your opponent of? Well, he doesn't want to debate. He doesn't want to talk.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to talk. He won't agree to another debate. He won't talk to us. Why would he talk to us? The American people deserve to have Donald Trump talk to them. He had, 27 interviews in less than 2 weeks?
No kidding.
And she's had like a half.
Yeah, well, she had that. Well, in fact, on Friday morning when you and I talked here on the show, we hadn't heard that interview yet, but that Friday interview with Kamala Harris, that was interesting to say the least in terms of how terrible it was.
It was word salad fest. She went right back to where she was, so the more people that hear that interview, they realize that the 5 days that it took to prep her for that debate, if that's what you want to call it, the event where her sorority sister was one of the moderators and her best friend owned was the executive vice president of the network, the 5 days it took for them to go over the questions that her sorority sister now says she was pretty much briefed on, that she had to memorize all the answers. So it's 5 days of memorization. They want another debate. Trump was right. You don't immediately scream for another fight if you want it.
No kidding. Yeah, his prize fighter analogy was right on the money, I think. That's exactly what happens. It's always the same. I want a rematch.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, let's head over to the telephone lines here real quick. We've got Elizabeth in Lutz giving us a call this morning. Good morning, Elizabeth. You're on with Frank Silvato.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for being there. And
sure.
Frank, knowing that you're a fellow Catholic, I wonder if you thought about this. God, of course, being merciful to Donald Trump all the way through, right? Pope John Paul II, Saint Pope John Paul II, when he was, the attempt to assassinate him went off, and he gave credit. He said that Our Lady of Fatima, specifically, just that Our Lady guided the bullet that missed his heart by just tiny fractions of an inch. And interestingly enough, July 13th is one of my favorite feast days of Our Lady, Mystical Rose. And September 15th is the Feast of Our Lady of Sorrows. So, the Simeon prophecy that, the sword would pierce her heart and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But just, wanted to bring that up because God is protecting him. And I know that in my heart of hearts. And I just know that Our Lady is really, he's one of her special children. Let's put it that way. So I just wanted to throw that out there and just see what your take is on that about John Paul II.
Very interesting. Yeah,
she guided that bullet, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened in July as well.
Well, we appreciate the call. Thanks, Elizabeth. Elizabeth and Luther. Hey, our pleasure. Our pleasure. Frank, what do you think?
Well, the people who possess faith are convinced that there is a force of good that's protecting Donald Trump. I mean, this guy in Palm Beach didn't get a shot off.
Yeah.
Was it easy to see a muzzle coming through a fence that has growth growing through the fence? No, it's not. So why were the Secret Service? Why did they catch that muzzle, the flash of that metal coming through the fence? We can suppose all we want, but the people who believe in the battle of good and evil are certainly believing that Donald Trump is being protected by the forces of good, and that these people who are trying to execute the Marxist philosophy of win at all cost and assassination are on the forces of evil. So, I am a Catholic and I do have faith, and I do believe that that Donald Trump is being protected by who or what is up for God to know. So,
well, it has got to be infuriating to those, and let's face it, I hate to say it, but there are people who would be on the side of let's get rid of Donald Trump. I mean, they exist. And it becomes this kind of battle, doesn't it? It's just mind-boggling that in this day and age, here we go. I remember learning about the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and, of course, Martin Luther King Jr., the attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan, and we think that this is far back in the past. It's decades away, but here it is. It's all front and center again.
Well, it's front and center, and times two in a short period of time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, well, there's just this one deranged guy out there. It doesn't happen in rapid succession like this unless there's a problem with the ideology that these people are born from. And you can see it every single day on social media. And in the aftermath of the news yesterday, there were people out there, and I saved the screenshot just because I had to be able to look at it again today to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me. Somebody going, "Oh, big deal. What the joke that she posted was, well, I hope that didn't trigger you too much."
Oh,
I mean, when you've got an asinine response to an attempted assassination of a public figure, that says so much about you. It says so much about the mentality that you possess, but it also says so much about the mentality of the ideology of which you call yourself a part of. If you're on the left side, there's something going on with the people on the far left of your ideology that's now established as murderous. You've got to start examining your political party and your political philosophy, because it's fostering this stuff.
Yeah, and to them and to some very, very sick individuals, they think that it's all justifiable. Again, it's that end justifies the means. It's that this is all for the greater good. It's like you talk about this, the violent revolution, But this guy he meant business. This wasn't Squeaky Fromm, trying to get Gerald Ford. This is a whole different deal.
No, and also when you look at the weapon that was being used and the efficiency of it, I just got a direct message from a friend of mine, and he said, the AK-47 is only effective from 300 to 800 or 300 to 500 yards. It's a close combat weapon. So he even chose the wrong weapon. That just goes to show you it's the ideology. He wasn't someone who was picked out of the crowd because he's this genius assassin. He's a troubled individual, but he's a zealot. He's a zealous individual. If you're willing to take your politics to that extreme where you have to put your finger on a trigger, that's not the American way, people. And if you rolled your eyes at what happened yesterday, you got to rethink the way you think about politics, because we don't assassinate people. We just don't.
You got that right.
Or at least we shouldn't. If you like the podcast, please head on over to undergroundusa.com and sign up for our Substack. It brings the podcast episodes and new articles directly into your inbox, circumventing the censors and the fact checkers and all of the other censorship-happy idiots that are out there. And don't forget to talk politics and religion with your friends, families, acquaintances, and colleagues. That's where we find out that we have more in common than in difference. And that's where we expose the treachery of the elitist class in their want to divide us as a people. That's how we can stop them. That's how we can save the Republic. You're listening to Underground USA. My name is Frank Salvato. We'll be right back after this.
When someone is having a stroke, every minute counts. Just as putting out a fire quickly can stop it from spreading, treating a stroke quickly can reduce damage to the brain. The clock begins ticking as soon as you spot the signs of a stroke, because some treatments can only be used if the patient reaches the hospital in the first 3 hours after symptoms appear. So don't wait. Call 911 right away and get the person to a hospital immediately, even if the symptoms go away. If you think someone is having a stroke, remember the word FAST. F is for face. Ask the person to smile and check whether one side of their face is drooping. A is for arms. Have the person raise both arms and see if one arm drifts downwards. S is for speech. Ask the person to repeat a short phrase and notice if their words sound slurred. And finally, T is for time. If you spot any of these signs, call 911 right away to get the person to a hospital fast. Strokes are medical emergencies. The sooner a patient gets treatment, the better their chance of a good recovery.